Hello, folks. My name is Karl Monahan. This is the Pelvic Pain Natters podcast, and this is a Friday takeaway. Excuse me. Friday takeaways are small snippets of information, bite-sized chunks of clinical reflections, looking at research, reflecting on things that I've experienced in clinic with patients and general conversations around pelvic pain as well. This is episode 49. And today I want to talk about something that I discussed with a patient the other day around flare-ups. So I'm continuing on this theme of flare-ups. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all your feedback. Really loving the interaction at the moment. So do keep that coming in, please. Lovely to know that people are listening to the podcast and finding benefit from it as well. So thank you for your support. It is genuinely much appreciated. Episode 50 is coming up next week, and I'm just going to give a bit of a shout out to all the love that we have had, as well, of course, of giving you useful bits of information as well. So this week I am, and thank you for your patience for last week. I was away with the family. I decided to take a bit of a break, which perhaps in light of today's podcast name might be really quite relevant. And today's podcast episode is why flare-ups are a little bit like burnouts, why there is a comparison between flare-ups and burnout. And in doing this, I'm trying to make sense of what a flare-up is, trying to help you to understand what is going on. And when we draw parallels, when we're able to reflect on other things that are similar to a flare-up, it can open our eyes up to, oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, maybe I can see something deeper here. So big shout out to Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. You were the one who mentioned this to me, that flare-ups are like burnout. So first of all, let's define a flare-up, and then we'll define burnout, and then we'll draw some parallels. So a flare-up is an increase in symptoms above baseline. Now, your baseline might be zero. You might not get any symptoms, or your baseline might be quite high and quite spiky anyway. A flare-up is a period of time that may last minutes, hours, days, weeks, or even months above your baseline. And it leads to more despair, more uncertainty, a whole range of other emotions, but definitely an increase in the physical pain and the physical discomfort and the physical suffering that one is experiencing. It might just be that the same location of symptoms in the same location are more are higher or more prevalent, or it might be that there are other symptoms that come along at the same time. So we're going to look at some descriptions of what burnout is. So we're going to go for the World Health Organization, and then we're going to take a look at the NHS here in the UK, and we're going to look at Psychology Today as well. So according to the World Health Organization, and this is looking at occupational burnouts, but there's lots of parallels here, okay? And I think that the patient in mind here, he works incredibly hard, okay? And life is very, very much part of his life. So this is the World Health Organization description. So burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress, but I'm going to bracket workplace. So burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as a resulting from chronic stress that has not been successfully managed and is characterized by three dimensions: feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, increasing mental distance, or feelings of negativism or cynicism, and a reduced efficacy. So it's quite wordy, isn't it? But I think the parallels are absolutely there. Let's take a look at what the NHS have to say. So burnout is, and this is not, although this is still occupational burnout, again, I think the parallels here are a little bit more succinct and easier to read. Burnout is the result of a prolonged period of stress which negatively affects your well-being. The signs and symptoms may be subtle at first, but can progressively deteriorate and become overwhelming. So emotional symptoms, Emotions might feel blunted. You might feel helplessness or hopelessness, becoming tearful, irritable, numbness, feeling unfulfilled, feeling unappreciated. Behavioral symptoms, disengagement, social withdrawal, loss of commitment, uncharacteristic mistakes, lack of planning, and it says holiday planning inconsistent, and being inconsistent with work. Physical symptoms, muscle pains, headaches, tiredness, lethargy, sleeping problems, memory problems, lack of concentration, and they also put weight gain or weight loss here as well. Now, this dives a little bit deeper than the World Health Organization and looks at, emotional, behavioral, and physical symptoms. And I think there are massive parallels here. If you are a patient, or indeed the loved one of a patient, or maybe even a clinical therapist who treats this condition, you might well recognize these either in yourself or your partner or friend or loved one, or the patients that you are seeing. Sound familiar? It does to me. And I have had pelvic pain. I know the condition only too well, and I absolutely recognize these physical, behavioral, and emotional symptoms that came along with the flare-ups that I was having when I had my symptoms as well. So, common causes. Now, remember, this is the NHS, and we're still looking at work burnout. We're going to take a look at a slightly different approach in just a moment. But occupational burnout. So, common causes: work-life imbalance, high volumes of work, lack of resources, feeling unsupported, unclear job expectations, and feeling unable to influence decisions. Now, often in flare-ups, we try and reduce it to one factor. Oh, it must have been that beer, or it must have been that sexual episode, or maybe it was training too hard in the gym. We'll often try and reduce it down to one factor, but ultimately there's going to be multiple factors that are happening here. And if we can look beyond just what's happening in ourselves, maybe within the environment around us, then we're more likely to get more clues as to other factors that influence flare-ups. I'm not dismissing sexual activity or having a beer or training in the gym as the examples I gave there, but all I'm asking is that we definitely look a little bit further. We look a little bit beyond those realms in order to help to understand what is contributing to a flare-up. And notice the word I'm using here is contribution, not causing. So often again, we because this is the way the human mind works. More on the human mind in episode 51, by the way. And I'm going to do a little mini series on and then this is not a mental condition. It's not purely psychological. It's not in your mind, but the mind will influence us here. I'm going to do a series on how the mind works because it fascinates me. Um, okay, so this is from Psychology Today. What causes burnout? Burnout is not simply a result of working long hours or juggling too many tasks, though those both may play a role. The cynicism, depression, and lethargy that are characteristic of burnout most often occur when a person is not in control of how a job is carried out at work or at home, or is asked to complete tasks that conflict with their sense of self. Equally pressing is working towards a goal that doesn't resonate or when a person lacks support. If a person doesn't tailor responsibilities to match a true calling, or at least take a break once in a while, they could face burnout, as well as the mountain of mental and physical health problems that often come along with it, including headaches, fatigue, heartburn, and other gastrointestinal symptoms, as well as an increased potential for alcohol, drug, or food misuse. So again, there's real parallels. I'm not saying that a flare-up is burnout. I'm absolutely not saying that. But in us trying to unpack and make sense what a flare-up is, there are clear and obvious parallels to a burnout. And I think in understanding that, it may give more rationale as to why my system is now sensitized. Why am I now in a flare up? When we look at all these other multiple factors that happen beyond the body, and if you haven't listened to my mini series on pelvic floor dysfunction, why it is so important to look beyond the pelvic floor as not only the cause of symptoms, but also how you get out of a flare up and indeed how you overcome pelvic pain itself. If we only isolate and focus in on the pelvic floor, then we're missing so many opportunities for understanding the condition, and we're also missing so many opportunities for overcoming the condition. So, this is episode 49 of the Pelvic Pain Natters podcast. This is a Friday takeaway. My name's Karl Monahan. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to get your reflections. You can comment on the platform that you're currently listening on, or you can email me at pelvicpainmatters@gmail.com. Please do subscribe. Please do share us. And please do tune in next week for the very, very next episode of the Pelvic Pain Natters podcast. Thank you once again. It is always a genuine pleasure. Until next time.